In today's episode, we have a guest who is young and have lots of money to invest. He started his system integration and cloud computing business in 2011. He sold his first business for 7 figures in 2018. He is an early investor in an emerging esports team in Singapore. Today we have him on our show to share some of his experience in investing and also to teach us on later on how to invest as a venture capitalist in esports, especially. Hi, Lance. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How about you?
Okay, I'm gonna go straight to the very hard question.
Sure.
How old are you actually? How old are you?
25?
25. And you sold your first business in 2018, which is 2 years ago. Wow!
Thank you, thank you.
7 figures. Oh,
Thank
it's seven. If I remember, it was 8 figure, right? It's not 7 figure. Am I right? I can't. Although you said
so
figure.
there so it's actually the structure of the deal, right? So you can consider it 7 figures to 8 figures. So
Oh, I see. That's a very good amount, and you
thank
just
you.
review that amount to us. Okay, so when did you sell? When did you sell your last business exactly? Is it 2018?
Yeah, it's actually in August 2018. Very thankful for my team, right? Who was there with me all the way, right?
And you started the business in 2011,
Yes.
and that was, let me count, nine years ago, which is when you are 14. Are you
Yeah,
sure?
16. I'm 16.
That when you started the business when you're age 16.
Yeah.
Oh my God! So,
So kind of
what?
got influenced by my family.
So, at age 16, are you even eligible to be a director of a company?
Well, I use my parents' name for a reason.
But let's talk about that 2011. No, so what prompted you to start that business? As young as 2000, as young as 16 years old.
The funny thing is, I used to be looking up to my parents who are entrepreneurs, right? And many of my family members, they were entrepreneurs. So I wanted to see whether I could make something out for myself. Yeah, so the rest was history.
I see. So, so entrepreneurship seems to be built in your blood, and I'm really impressed. I'm really
Thank
impressed.
you.
You know, why? Okay, so going on. So why do you want to be a venture capitalist? So you sold your business in 2018, and 2019 you were pretty much maybe not doing anything, ZBL for example, and then you started. And when did you start to be a venture capitalist?
So across that 2017, 2018, 2019 kind of years, I've been doing a bit of angel investing here and there. Right. So, being an angel investor, what happens is you actually use your own money to back startups, right? So, I think the natural progression after a while is you realize I need to do a bit of asset allocation, right? I can't throw all my eggs in one basket, but I still want to actually give back to the startup community. So, I think the natural progression for us is actually to raise a fund as a VC to deploy the capital into promising startups to help entrepreneurs realize their dreams.
I see. So what do you think? What it takes to be one venture capitalist? What do you need to have in you to be call yourself a venture capitalist?
I guess there are a couple of things, right? So one thing is I guess really need guts, right? Because you are after all raising money from people, right? So I like to tell founders that are trying to raise capital and tell me that hey, it's very difficult. I like to joke with them and say, look, try raising a $15 million seed round, right? Because that's exactly what we are going through right now. We're actually raising our first fund. So that in itself is kind of like a seed round, but it's a mega seed round that we're trying to raise. Plus, the second thing that I think you need the kind of guts because you are investing in companies that have not been proven to be successful, right? Unlike if you go on the stock market, you buy stocks, these companies have already reached a certain point of success, right? Which is why they could IPO, right? So there's a lot of risk involved when it comes to VC. That's why I guess you need quite a bit of guts. The second thing I think a VC needs would be the kind of business acumen to be able to discern whether a good team versus a not so good team or a mediocre business plan from a awesome business plan, right? After all, these are the kind of qualities that you are betting on so that the companies grow and you actually make a return on investment from there, right? So these are the kind of qualities I see in very successful VCs, right? Of course, the slightly more successful ones, they tend to have some operational experience, either because they were corporate executives or they were entrepreneurs, right? So they are able to go down to the ground and say, hey, look, this is uh, the the company has some trouble and all that. They are able to come down and actually roll their sleeves up to work together with the portfolio companies. So I think these are the three key I would say I wouldn't say criteria, but attributes of a VC that is able to generate very good returns. Yeah. So that's my take.
I'm pretty sure that later, you're going to explain more on this whole VC thing and how to go about doing it, which I will give you a lot more time to do it.
Sure.
And when I hand over this stage to you, for your presentation later. So there are many industry out there, that are way profitable, like the medical, the AI, deep tech, which a lot of people are investing in now. So tell me a little bit more. Why esports?
Okay, so I think let's just say not why not the others first, right? Medical, it's a tough business, right? You have FDA and your HSA and all these regulatory bodies that you need to clear, right? So that actually makes it very very high risk. Unless you actually understand how to actually navigate around the regulatory landscape, it could potentially be a binary outcome, right? What I mean by that is you can either have a big exit, which I'm going to share, explain later, or you're going to have your investments go to zero, right? So medical, as much as it's exciting, right, it's not a mandate I will go for, right, given the kind of expertise that we have. In terms of, then it comes to deep tech, right? Your AI, IoT, these are the kind of companies that need a long gestation period. What do I mean by what I mean by that is actually when you invest in these companies, it takes a while for them to actually go out to market, right? So I prefer companies that are able to go out to market fast, right? So looking at the esports industry, you are seeing very high growth rates, right? Both in terms of viewership, in terms of the revenues generated. You are looking at that kind of growth rate that brings a lot of potential for investments, but yet you have a situation of the esports industry not being very well developed yet. So you kind of can say that enter at a low valuation, build up the company, right, and sell at a much higher valuation. This actually gives us a better opportunity to get the kind of returns for our investors, right? As I'll explain further later on how funds are structured in this space.
That's really very good, insight from 25 years old. And I
Learn
want
a
to
lot
ask you,
from others.
I wanted to ask you this question. I definitely have to ask you this question. Do you
Sure.
mind? Do you mind telling the viewers how much did you actually sell your company for back in 2018?
The actual amount is 10, right? But I wouldn't share the structure of the deal because
Yeah,
uh,
sure. I understand. But no, for I think the viewers are definitely all, very curious. Since you tell us the number, thank you. So I'm sure a lot of us or a lot of viewers can't wait. They can't wait. They want to listen more to your investment mentality, to how you actually, access a company, and I'm sure that's going to be covered in the next few slides that you're going to show us. So I'm going to hand over the time to you to present to us in-depth information in esports and in investing. And the time is yours. Thank you.
thanks, Neil. Really appreciate. Happy to be here. Right. So before I actually go into the details of esports and venture investing, maybe I just need to make a very important claim. Right. First thing first, this is just purely information purposes only. Right. Not asking you to buy or sell any securities. Right. Not asking you to buy or sell any convertibles and all. Right. So that's one of the key information that the key disclaimer I need to put forward in case MAS comes after me, right? So there are also some forward-looking statements that we are projecting, right? So please, if you need any professional financial advice, please engage a professional financial advisor, right? So a little bit about myself. I'm the founding managing partner of Gamerforce Ventures, as Neil has very kindly introduced. Right. I'm also sitting on the investment committee as its chair, and we are an early stage venture fund that focuses on esports and gaming. Right. We have a global mandate. What that means is we are able to invest across multiple geographies, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's in Southeast Asia or in the US or in UK, right? We are pretty open in that sense, right? Prior to that, I've been angel investing, right? Invested in 10 startups, right? Directly, right? In Southeast Asia mostly, having some investments here and there in the UK, US, and Hong Kong, right? Also, I have invested more than 100 startups, indirectly through two top tier venture capital funds as a limited partner, right? From there, I've also, based on this, I've deployed more than $1 million into the private equity space, right? Prior to setting up Gamerforce, I was on the investment committee of an angel investment fund, right? As mentioned kindly by Neil, I founded and sold a startup, right, in the cloud computing space, between the times of 2011 and 18. So that was my previous life. So just to give you a little bit of a bird's eye view of venture funds in the esports sector, right? Of course, there's us, right? We're trying to raise between 10 to 15 million, right? So if you see there's this vintage year that we talk about over here, this is actually the year that the fund actually starts deploying capital, right? So usually for us, we started deploying this year, so the vintage is actually in 2020, right? Then of course there's Play Ventures, which debuted in 2019 with a $40 million fund, right? Congratulations to Henrik, right? Nice guy. If you don't know him, go talk to him, yeah. So of course you have a number of European and UK funds such as Artist Capital Management, Hero Capital, Bitcraft, right? These are funds with more than 100 million in assets under management, right? So typically AUM means how much money we can actually deploy into different startups. So these are pretty big funds, right? That hopefully one day will reach that point, right? So a little about what we invest in, right? In more detail, right? So we are an early stage fund. So we are specifically focused between seed to Series B, right? At the moment we are raising a fund of 10 to 15 million, right? We only invest in esports and gaming ventures. We have evaluated more than 20 companies, mainly in the technology space. because these technologies, right, are the infrastructure needed to bring the esports industry to the next level. So just to share a little bit about one of the companies that we have evaluated, um, they are they are actually doing artificial intelligence for esports marketing, which I think is pretty interesting in itself because being able to calculate all these metrics for your sponsors, I think that would give teams a better standing and credibility with them, and hopefully this would help the industry grow at a much faster pace, right? So we're targeting to close this fund by 2020, right? August, right? We have triggered the first close already, right? Currently the investments are actually made using my own money, right? And we will be supporting our portfolio companies in aspects such as marketing, business development, tech improvements, and if possible, grant applications to different government agencies such as Enterprise Singapore, IMDA. Yeah, so these are the kind of things that we try to support our portfolio companies with. Now, let's have a 30,000, now that we have seen a 30,000 foot view of what we are trying to do, let's go into the industry, right? I think industry wise, we can split it up into four different groups, right? In general, one side, on one hand, you have the esports teams such as EVOS, which Ivan has actually came online before. So it's kind of like now you realize that you have two guys on two different sides of the negotiation table, right? When it comes to the term sheets and all, right? So we recently led an undisclosed seed round in Resurgence, right? And Team Flash was had a 1.7 million raise from Octava, right, which is a family office based in Singapore. Right, in the US, you actually have Fnatic, which is very well known, US $19 million Series A, large round, number of private equity groups coming into the picture, right? So in the US, you are seeing that it's slightly more US, Europe. These are the guys that are already ahead of us, right? That's why I think Southeast Asia presents a lot of opportunity as well, right? And looking forward to Neo and everyone else together together we kind of like build this ecosystem, right, to its fullest potential, right? On another group, you have the league and event organizers, right? Recently we had the SEA Games, right? We had PvP Esports, which was sponsored by mainly Singtel, right? And the Dota, right, championships, Dota 2 championships, which was held last year, right? They had a prize pool of $35 million. Put things in perspective, right? This is more than 2 to 3 times our fund size, right? So can you imagine if you win a 35 million prize pool? I like to joke with my friends, right? If you win a 35 million prize pool, what I will do is I'll just say, okay, let's close the fund right now. We're going to deploy capital on our own, right? So Dota, right? So some private groups include like new for example, the gym, right? I understand that you guys recently had a tournament as well, right? So congratulations on that, right? There's Elephant, which is quite huge in this space as well, right? So on the other, on the third angle pillar of this space, IP owners, also known as your game developers, right? So they have the most traction, right? Because probably people understand them better. You have Garena, right, which under the C Group, which IPO'd with a up round on the New York Stock Exchange, right? It's actually the first Southeast Asian unicorn, right? Which I think is pretty awesome, right? You have two unicorns in Southeast Asia coming from sports and gaming, going to IPO, right? That's pretty awesome in itself, I think, right? And of course, you have Riot Games, which was acquired by Tencent. You have Niantic, which raised a round led by Samsung, IV Institutional Venture Partners, Battery Ventures, right? The round is based on a valuation of 3.7 billion, right? So that's a huge, huge unicorn, right? So for who don't know, Niantic was the guy were the guys behind Pokemon Go game, right? Epic, they raised $1.3 billion, right, in a venture round from Vulcan Capital. So that's the family office of the late Paul Allen, and Lightspeed Venture Partners, one of the top venture funds in the US, right? KKR, private equity fund, right? And the pre-money valuation for that round was $13.8 billion. Huge, right? So you have a lot. It seems like these guys tend to be in the market, right? Focus on funny story is ancillary technologies around esports, right? So for example, you have your video streaming platforms like Twitch, right, which was acquired by Amazon for $900 million in 2014, right? So congrats to Justin and group, right? You have also the game platforms such as your Steam, your Face It, which actually raised 15 million from Makers Fund in Hong Kong, right? And Sostronic, which raised another venture round with Infection, right, in the US. So these are the kind of this actually gives you the kind of feel about the ecosystem, right? To which investors will look into. So another market map, right? Where the money is, right? You have Twitch, Smashcast, broadcasters, and then you have Gamer Sensei, Yosudo, which is right now closing around. Right, we might enter at the Series A. Analytics, these are the kind of companies that we look for mainly. Right, you have player organizations such as Immortals, Evos, Resurgence, Team Flash, right? So these are but what we focus on are the analytics and tools. We don't usually touch game developers, right? That's more of Henrik's domain, right? We don't mind following him, right? Amateur for so you have different groups, right? So realize just to feed a little bit of information, you have 5 unicorns in the market already, right? So it's kind of interesting. IPOs, one M&As going on in the on so far. So the money in esports, right? And I think it's kind of interesting to title this episode as the whether it could ever make a profit, right? Because a lot of investors are actually investing in 2018. Funny story though, the amount of money that came into esports was actually lower in 2019. We believe that is because of investors taking a more conservative approach, right? Given what happened to various large such as the soft fund, right? You know the story of WeWork, Uber, and company, right? So that made a lot of investors more cautious. So I think it's natural for the venture investments into industries that are so new, such as lesser compared to what things like biotech and software, right? So just to show you a little bit of how we actually evaluate deals, right? If you think about it, you have 1,000 over companies that are backed by angel investors and all, right? So when it comes to us, we actually screen down and say, look, there's going to be 411 in the second round. Let's say, for example, because we typically bank them at this stage, so 1027 companies that we back, we 111 going to Series B, Series A, Series B, right? So out of that, right, what you realize is most of the time you have companies that are already dead, right? Half of your companies will be dead by then, right? So that is why we actually try to go for unicorns, and we're actually very selective of the companies that we invest in, right? So in fact, most VCs don't invest in more than 1% of the companies that they see, right? So that's the harsh reality, right? And that's what we're going to, I'm going to share a bit more on how they actually evaluate companies as well, right? So what actually makes a good venture investment, right? So a lot of people ask me this: founder in the esports is going to come to Gamer for for us to back you, right? What are the things that we look out for, right? I think this like diagram actually covers what we look out for on a very outward view, right? So the first thing that we look for is most importantly the founder, the team, right? Because they are the ones executing the business plan, right? Of course, we look at the opportunity, right? We look into the market sizing, which we believe is going to be more than it's already cost $1 billion, right? In Southeast Asia. I think with that kind of market size is something that we want to look into, right? So the growth of the market as well, that is important for us. Of course, how well the team has executed in this business plan, and and also importantly, we don't want to overpay. So we actually look into the due terms, both the economic due terms as well as the control due terms, which I'm going to share a little bit later. So one fact that we believe is a top tier founder and team will, with a mediocre business plan, will always outperform a mediocre team with a stellar business plan, right? So if you think about it, right, the business plan will always change, right? The business model changes, time changes. For example, COVID, you had a lot of changes in business, right? New opportunities coming out, old opportunities dying out, right? So the challenge is for you to pivot towards the new opportunity, right? And I think the founders are the ones who are able to steer the company in the right direction so that we can actually survive through the crisis and eventually get a good exit, right? So typically what we realize is co-founders tend to perform better than solo founders. It's not that we don't back solo founders, but this is a trend that we have seen. Because they always say, right, two heads are always better than one, right? Your co-founder can actually look out for you in terms of your blind spots and vice versa, right? So 90% of the game changes are conceived outside of working hours. So I like to potential entrepreneurs that are coming into this space, right? If you really feel that your idea is going to be a game changer, but you're not sure whether to go for it, my advice is take a plunge. You will not regret it, right? So there are different types of financing options, right? There's one type which is your off-balance sheet financing and your bank debt. This typically takes very short timing, right? 1 month, 2 months, the bank will get back to you and say, "Hey, hit, we are we're going to disperse this amount of money to you," right? So crowdfunding, right? It takes 3 to 6 months, right? Because we need to run a campaign and stuff, right? And crowdfunding, we believe, is a good platform for you to actually get a proof of concept, right? I used to be in angel equity, right? So I used to take anywhere between 6 to 9 months to make a decision. Sometimes, if we are fast, we can actually do it in 3 months, right? But venture capital takes the longest time, between 6 to 18 months, right? I think now My advice to founders when you're trying to raise capital is it always takes longer than you expected, right? So always ensure that you have enough runway to survive. Okay? You don't want a case where your VC is doing due diligence in your company while you're burning cash, and by the time the VC says, "Here's $1 million, take it and run with it to grow the company," and you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, the company is dead," right? It's not a very good one, right? So now my question, you may be asking me, Lance, why does it take you so long for you to actually make a decision on investment, right? So this is exactly the reason, right? If you look at how we actually work, right? We are the general partner. We deploy 1% of the capital, but we actually get external investors, right? What we call limited partners, right? They're going to contribute 99% of that investment capital, right? So the kind of we are actually investing other people's money, and I think as responsible investors, we need to be very clear of the business before we can actually make the investment, and we want to make sure that we are able to contribute to the growth of the company, so that of course for us we are able to generate better returns, right? So if you look at this carried interest over here, this is where our bulk of the money is made, right? Because we charge it on the profits that is the capital appreciation, right? So that allows us to uh, grow our wealth disproportionately. So do you think we want our investment to actually succeed? I would say definitely yes, right? Plus, your your head is on the chopping board, right? With the limited partners coming after you if you perform, right? So that's the reason why it actually takes so long. So what does it take when you raise a round, right? You you come to us, right? That's under the swapping, the part of the value chain. So that's where the GP, the target companies are involved, where we conduct due diligence, right? That typically is the longest time in the value chain before we, right? So it typically takes about the 12 to 18 months that you see on the table earlier. That's where the money, most of the time actually goes, right? When we conduct due diligence, we, we typically would look into your customers. We typically look into your financials. We look into your management team and many other aspects, right? That if you are interested, we could actually do another webinar on this, right? But definitely happy to share that, right? So once the diligence is complete, the term sheet is signed, we send it to the lawyers. They'll draft the subscription agreements and the other agreements that are needed, right? We'll invest, we'll place the money in, right? And we will work with you, right, to grow your company, and eventually we'll sell our stake in the exit phase, right? So some people ask, well, Lance, you tell me that you are looking for traction, right? So when I say traction, what do I actually mean, right? There are actually many different ways to look at traction, right? So the most obvious include revenues. If you're a software company and you're on the cloud, you should be generating recurring revenue. So we are actually looking at your annualized recurring revenues, right? If you are a marketplace, you will be looking at what we call GMV, right? Gross merchandise value, right? If you're an app, we are looking at your daily active users. Of course, we look at your churn rate, right, in terms of what is the percentage of your clients leaving your platform, dropping your software for somebody else, right? So these are some of the different ways that we analyze your traction, right? In combination, it's always in combination. It's not going to be just one metric, right? It's always a combination of different things, right? So for example, the company that I was talking about earlier, AI for esports marketing, they are actually using a SaaS model, right? Software as a service model. Right? So what we actually combine in terms of traction evaluation is annualized recurring revenues plus your churn rate. So these are the typical numbers that we look at when we make an investment, right? Then this table shows you some of the different business models and how we actually value these businesses, right? So for example, for e-commerce, you can see for pre-seed, you are looking at somewhere between 500K to 3 million. Seed round, you are looking at 6 to 10 times net sales, right? You are looking at, for Series A, you are looking at 8 to 15 times net sales. For SaaS model, same thing for pre-seed or Series A, you are looking at 8 to 20 times annual recurring revenues. Right, online media, right? You're looking at 500K to 2 million for pre-seed. Seed and Series A is between 6 to 10 times annual sales, right? Marketplaces, platforms, businesses, you are looking at same thing for pre-seed as online media. And for seed and Series A, you're looking at between 1.2 to 3.3 times of your gross merchandise value. Of course, different VCs have different ways of valuing companies, right? So this is just a ballpark that we throw out to give entrepreneurs a guide in terms of how much your company is worth, right? At what kind of stage, right? So some of the more prominent deals that happened recent days, you have more recent investment, right? Such as Cloud9, 53.6 million Series B, 50 million Series B for PTS. Gen G raised a 46 million round in 2016, and so on, right? And in terms of the recent exit, maybe you can't see it very clearly, right? So you realize that Overwatch League acquired, right, for 35 million, right? Ustream acquired by IBM, 130 million, right? Twitch acquired by Amazon, 970 million, right? So these are some of the acquisitions. In terms of IPO, we're looking at Super League, which is a sport for tournament organizer. When they IPO, the market cap was 91.7 million. It's just as an example. It actually happened in February 2019, 1 year ago. Of course, Gareth Racer, all of us know the stories, right? So I'm gonna discuss a little bit more later. So what is our thesis in esports? Right. What you realize is revenues have been growing 45% year on year over the past 4 years, right? To $1 billion global market in 2019. We are projecting it to grow at 24% per year on year until 2021, right? Southeast Asia is even faster. You're looking at 30% or so, right? Some of the key trends in the esports industry include data analytics, right? So these are some of the things that we're looking out, right? When we're making investments, right? Data analytics. You're talking about predictive analytics, such that if, for example, I want to play Dota, right? If I have a software or API that allows me to predict what my opponents are going to do in the future, in the next few minutes, then I could formulate my strategies to my own guys. Hey, guys, you move here, you move there, and to try to counteract the strategy that the opponent is making, right? India represents a very large opportunity for esports, right? It's a market that we're exploring at the moment, right? So COVID-19, right, interestingly has helped esports see a massive rise in global prominence, right? Especially amongst the traditional sports fans. You know, the kind of atmosphere that you get when you watch an esports match, it could be an alternative to the kind. It's just like you are going to the stadium to watch, say, a basketball match, right? Let's say you're an NBA fan, you typically go to the stadium to kind of like watch the play basketball, right? But now because of COVID-19, you are kind of like sheltered at home and all that. Kind of forced to you can't actually go out, and now esports presents a very good alternative for you to enjoy that kind of atmosphere again, right? I'm pretty sure that the the gym team has probably received feedback about that in the tournament that they organized recently, right? So by the way, this is not by me. This is by a incubator accelerator firm that is based in Singapore, right? So Yasuda was actually came out from the first batch of Ansler, and so they actually did some market review and insights on Medium, right? So I think in terms of tech in esports, right? There are a couple of things that we believe will kind of help to grow the esports space in terms of its prominence, right? For example, we believe that the 5G telecommunications will allow us to actually have much better streaming, much faster data processing power, much stronger data processing, and that in itself, I think, will be beneficial when it comes to other parts of the esports, because by lowering the kind of barrier to entry for esports players in general, right? This actually would increase the quality of cloud game, right? Also known as gaming as a service, right? Where you actually stream the game from your to your you can stream high quality games to your mobile, right? So imagine playing Dota on your phone, right? So that's the kind of possibility that cloud gaming, and that is a very big thing that we are looking into right now, right? That would form quite a bit of investment thesis, right? And of course, we believe that VR and AR would give people a better experience when immersive experience when and being able to tap onto these technology trends would allow people such as your game developers to go at a much faster pace, right? However, VR and AR, in our opinion, will not be a key driver at least for the next 1 to 2 years, right? Because it would take quite a bit of time for the headsets, the cost of the headsets to come down at an exponential price, right? And having the kind of quality to stream the games to get together with the kind of telecommunication infrastructure that is needed, right? Of course, there are other technology trends that are not mentioned here, right? Always open to share more, right? So talking a little bit about South Asia, right? You know, Southeast Asia is this very different beast altogether even when it just comes to venture investing in general, right? Especially for esports, because you're looking at mainly mobile based esports such as Mobile Legends, right? So I'd like to take this chance to congratulate Jace, right, and the Resurgence team for winning the recent Mobile Legends tournament. Very happy for their achievements as well, right? And but what you realize in Southeast Asia is mainly there's a lot of mobile kind of usage in terms of esports. But in US, in Europe, the more affluent countries, you're seeing very much focus on consoles, on computers, right, laptops. And I think that is going to when you look at Southeast Asia as a market, right, you need something that is very has a low barrier to entry because um of the unique circumstances of the Southeast Asian population, right? To the numbers, right? The total number of mobile gamers in Asia is 250 million. So imagine you could tap into this market, this large market, right? I think that in itself says something, right? So a lot of companies are moving towards like hyper casual games and stuff like that to kind of engage their clients, right? So for example, e-commerce stores are getting hyper casual games to keep their customers engaged, right? So some consumer trends that researched when we were preparing for our fundraise was that if you look into esports audience, right? In 2018, it has reached 380 million, right? With mostly occasional viewers, but you have 165 million esports enthusiasts, right? The average, right, just to put a average spending, right, of the esports enthusiasts in 2018, it's $5.50, right, up by 20% since 2017, right. What this means is actually that the barrier to entry for esports is actually coming down, right. It also translates to a much larger piece of the pie in terms of the revenues, right, more than $1.8 billion US, right? As the industry matures, right, and believe that the media rights deals and all that coming into the picture, we believe average revenue per fan, right, to be conservatively growing to $6.60 by 2021, right, which translates to close to $1.5 billion in revenues. Right, that in itself is going to be a very big piece of the pie, and I think looking at the kind of growth in the esports space, I think we want to be able to tap into that kind of growth before anyone else can tap into that kind of growth. So you want the kind of first mover advantage kind of thing where you enter and hit it at the right timing when it's growing at a very fast pace. And you get your late stage investors to come in and say, look, we have tagged these companies, they have already grown to a certain size. Would you like to put some money into them so that they can grow at a much, much faster pace, right? When that happens, typically the valuation actually goes up, right? So we can actually mark up our gains and say, look, since this time we have generated how many times in total value in on invested capital, on paid in capital, right? TVPI. You can say like, look, we've generated 20% internal rate of return, right? Which means the kind of which is actually a good calculation in terms of what investors are looking out for in this space, right? In this venture investing space, right? To be at a so it allows us to go to the top desk of the venture capital firms out there, right? So some prominent companies in the scene, as I mentioned, Razer, right? Based in US and Singapore, founded in 2005, went IPO. Right? Some of the top investors include Mr. Koh Boon Hui, right? One of the earliest investor, right? So Garena, as I mentioned earlier, IPO New York Stock Exchange, right? One of the top publishers of games around the world, right? Twitch, which was acquired by Amazon for 970 million, right? Top tier kind of, and I believe we are actually streaming on Twitch as well, right? Most gamers stream on Twitch, so I wouldn't be surprised that they were bought out by Amazon when they wanted to come into the space for 970 million, right? And Genji, which is a esports organization, raising a $46 million Series B from multiple institutional investors, right? So now, just I want to open up, right, some of the tricks of the trade that we have, right, to entrepreneurs on the other side, right? Before you come to raise money from a VC like us, right, you may want to think about these things, right? When do you actually need it, right? You want to look into your what we call your cash runway, right, which is your cash in your bank account divided by your total expenses per month, as well as the market conditions, right? Sometimes the market is not very conducive for investments, right? Especially, for example, COVID-19, you will probably get not so good terms, right, when you talk to investors, right? Of course, you need to look into how much you actually need, right? Of course, what do you need for, right? What are your growth plans? What's the kind of trajectory for growth? You need to think about that. Think about how long it actually takes to raise the money, which is why a lot of us we tell you that look, you try to raise money when you don't need it, because if when you need it and you try to raise money, it's going to take a while for us to do due diligence, and I hope that by then you don't get your cash burn doesn't your runway doesn't run out, right? By the end of our due diligence process, right? How long would the investment, right? So if you're raising $1 million, tell us how long this $1 million would last. Is it going to be 12 months? Is it going to be 18 months? Right? 12 to 18 months is a good kind of gauge in terms of how long it will last, right? So think about that, right? Who do you actually raise it from, right? What's the kind of value add that your investors can bring to the table, right? Don't forget, some investors, not all investors are equal, right? Don't just go for the valuations, right? Because there are ways for us to play your valuation after giving it to you, right? So of course you must think about the fit and suitability for the investor, right? Because some investors only invest in certain areas and not others, right? Of course, do tell us what the funds raised is to be used for, right? Because we are very, very, very harped up about this. Why? Because we want the money used mainly for growth, right? So that is what we look into as investors. We want your company to grow so that the valuation of our shares. What kind of money do you need, right? Do you need it as debt? Do you need it as equity, right? Do you need us to do it as a convertible bond, right? Which is typically what we use, right? So convertible bonds work this way, right? I lend the money to you. You hit certain milestones, the bond converts into shares, right? So that's the general concept of a convertible bond, right? What are the terms, right? What economic terms, right? What it means is such as your valuation, right? Or in the case of our situation, in terms of convertible bonds, we have a valuation cap. There's a discount, whether there's interest to be paid, right? Other economic terms include what we call liquidation preference, right? Where we actually use preference shares and stuff like that to protect our downside, right? So you got so the thing is that and of course liquidation preferences have a wide variety, right? We could talk all day about them, right? But what you need to know is the standard market practice now is 1 times non-participative liquidation preference. So if you hear right from a VC, right, this is a good sign because they are typically giving you the best terms, right? In terms of economics side of things, right? Control terms are things like okay, I want a board seat on your company. I want certain veto rights. For example, you can't if you want to take on debt up of more than $150,000. I want to be the one. I want to be approving it. If not, I will not allow it to go through. If you want to expenses wise, if you want to use more than $300,000, you need to come to me before I will sign a check as well. So these are some of the control terms that we put in place to monitor our portfolio companies, right? So of course there are things like anti-dilution terms, right? There are things like ratchet terms, and these are the kind of terms that we put in place in order to make sure that portfolio companies perform, right? So don't think that the high valuation would be the best, right? The higher the valuation, the better it is, right? It's not the case. Remember, we have control terms to kind of come in to say, look, you did not perform, we're cutting your valuation. So how and when do you plan to us, right? Because for us, right, we need an exit. Our fund life is 10 years, right? There's only 10 years to roll. So typically we need to get out within 5 years, right? 5 to 8 years we need to get out, right? So you need to tell us how do we are you going to buy us out, right? Because sometimes we will put these kind of terms into the contract, right? So of course, most importantly, is your business actually suitable for funding by a VC, right? Look, a VC wants their portfolio company to be able to scale at a much faster pace upon our capital injection, right? Um, so the question is, are you able to meet that kind of expectations, right? Remember, a higher valuation also means higher expectations. So be careful. I always tell founders, be careful of what you wish for. Right? So some of the common mistakes that founders make when they look for VC money, right, is firstly that approach can be lacking in focus. Right, they prefer to be a shotgun, right? Anybody goes, rather than a rifle approach where you say, okay, this VC can add value to my company, that VC can add value to my company, right? And you should focus on the most likely sources, right? A few of the most likely sources, as opposed to a spray and pray, right? So what I suggest founders to do when they plan to approach a certain VC is go to their website, look into what are the kind of companies they invest in, right? You may also check out this particular database called Crunchbase, right? Just write it here. Crunch. Look at the Crunchbase profiles if available. Check out what they invest in, right? Check out what they invest in because that will give you an idea of what which VC should be for and which shouldn't be the ones that you're looking for, right? So that don't waste your time to right? Some people also underestimate the lead time needed to raise capital. As I mentioned earlier, it takes between 6 to 8 a VC to actually come back to you with a definite answer, right? So beware of that because we need. So if you want, you can actually build a relationship before that, right? So that's what I recommend founders to do. That a lot of them do is falling in love with their business plan, right? Sometimes business plans that are too thick, we typically just throw out the window because we review 500 to 1,000 business plans per month, right? A typical VC would be looking at that, right? Some founders take their projections too seriously. Do take note that your business model will always, right? Business conditions will always change. At the moment, your business conditions, what you realize is your projections are no longer valid. So don't, but of course, do give some thought into it. Do analyze with us your assumptions, right? Because if you don't, we would make our own assumptions and we'll start doing things to your projections that you might not like, right? Some entrepreneurs give us too many exhibits and but too little analysis, right? It shows us that you did not put a lot of thought into the business, right? So what we want to see is looking in depth into, hey, this is the exhibit. Why do you think that this is the situation right now, right? So it's good to be able to analyze very in depth about your business, right? Critical thinking, right, is needed. And that's what I always tell entrepreneurs, right? And a lot actually, and this is and the fourth point is actually very important, right? When I speak to a lot of companies with two techie founders that come in and tell me that look, we're gonna look at development and try to develop the perfect product before going out to market, right? What I can tell you is there's no perfect product because but the thing is, always remember real sales and customers count because that in itself is traction. Product development for us, right? Don't cut. You know the thing is, I've seen that came to us raising, um, who have raised $1 million for product development. Um, Nothing came out. Coming to us to raise another 3 million, $5 million for the product development, and a little bit of marketing and sales. I don't think that's the right way to go. For us, we prefer companies that are already generating revenues as much as possible. We prefer companies that are at least having traction in terms of users, in terms of customers, in terms of sales. That gives us a baseline for us to make our decisions, right? As mentioned, don't spend too much time with raising capital, right? Because you need a lot of time to run a business, right? I've went through that process. I can tell you it's hell, right? You need a lot of time to build your business. So focus on that. That should be your ultimate goal, right? So keep the eye on the right ball, right? Raising capital is not it's not an end in itself, right? Raising capital is just a means to an end for you to build your business, right? To be profitable, right? So that we can get our returns on investments. And you could pat yourself on the back and say, look, I built a company from zero, nothing, to something that's huge, right? Of course, having said that, we do help our portfolio companies with capital raise as well, right? As we are doing now with Resurgence, we are helping them with their capital raise, right? So if let's say any angels or any VCs that are listening to this podcast, if you are interested, please do ping me. I have my email address later that I will share with you as well. Um, some founders fail to appreciate the needs and wants of an investor, right? Because what we want is an exit, right? We want exit, multifold exit, because if you look at venture economics, what happens is most of the things will fail. You need your winners to cover everything else and more. So that is the kind of investor profile that you're dealing with when it comes to VCs, right? We want companies that can give us at least 10 times returns, if possible. And you have to really understand we are betting on your management team, right? Especially at such an early stage, right? I tell people that look, your business plan is just showing me your thought process, right? It doesn't tell me where your business is going to be 5 years from now. It just shows me your thought process, how you think, right? How you look at ideas, right? Your perspectives, and that is what we are betting on, right? Because when the business conditions change, you need to pivot. And if you think that the business is what we are betting on, I'm sorry, what we are betting on is the management team, right? Don't be afraid to share ideas, right? I always tell people that ideas are great. There's only one big problem. There's nothing proprietary about good ideas, right? So I tell people is ideas make up 5% of your win. Execution is 35%, right? Don't be penny wise, pound foolish, right? Which means don't just hop up over valuations, right? Don't be too hyped up over your valuations, right? Um, because there is a price to pay, right, for high valuations. There are terms that we can throw in to make sure that we can say that look, you want 100 million valuation, give you that, but if you don't perform, this is what's going to happen. If you don't perform, that's going to happen. If you raise at a down round, meaning you raise at anything below 100 million, this is going to happen, stuff like that. We have ways and tricks around it, right? We have tricks around valuations. So don't be too hopped up. Do take note that ownership is not control, right? Typically we have ways to get disproportionate control. So don't think that 20% of shares equals to 20% in terms of control, right? Because we have ways to get much bigger share of the control. So what I tell founders is what you need to look into is ownership low, control high. You need to have high control over your business, right? Compared to an ownership because compared to ownership because what you are getting is a slightly smaller piece of a much larger pie, and a lot of them don't have relative bargaining position, right? Sometimes you think that your VCs love you. Actually, sometimes you might love your VCs love you, right? Hard truth of life, right? This we realize on both sides of the table, right? What I like to end off, right, my presentation with is don't use a narrow lens when investing, right? Angels and VCs are most successful when they look ahead, far ahead, at the potential of the company, right? What it can be in the future and not what it is today, right? So with that, these are some acknowledgements I would like to make, right? To thank you to Dr. Ansel King from SMU Academy, right? For sharing some of the slides. Thank you to Traction for the esports report in April 2020. Ansler for the Medium insights from their Medium article. Some data from Crunchbase, Yuzu, right? Thank you all. And this is my contact details. Feel free to take them down. Right? Happy to share more if you guys are interested. Thanks. Back to you, Neil.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. You gave a good insight, from the different stakeholder and how a VC will actually values company. And also you gave very good tips to the startups out there on questioning yourself if you really need the money and if what is it that you need to do to get funding and the pitfall when you stand in front of a VC like you to present and the presentation that you work on. So, listening to your presentation, Lance, I actually have some question, from my end, so that we can spice this up a little bit. Now, it's the ultimate. One question that I really want to ask is esports really going to be profitable, like our title here?
I think esports will be profitable, but probably it's going to be 10 years from now because for one simple fact, um, it is on the verge of, it's actually gaining traction right now, right? You're looking at 20, 30 over percent growth per year, right? But the industry has still too many moving parts at the moment, right? And I guess that's our job, right, to come in, right, to help companies figure out how to leverage on the esports trends, how to leverage on how millennials consume content through esports, how to capture the kind of attention, right, from for these sponsors and all that. And only if you are able to do that, I think that is when esports as an industry will become profitable, right? And we would love to be on that journey together and figuring out how to make things work with the other stakeholders.
I read some contradicting reports out there, about esports being a big bubble. There are huge money going in and small money coming out. Now, how much do you agree on this statement? You want to share with us?
If you think about it, right, a lot of times you have people saying that this is going to be a bubble, that is going to be a bubble. Um, think about it this way, right? Um, when it comes to new business models, right, there's always this particular growth trend that at a certain point it will come down and it will go back up again, right? So you think about things like co-working spaces, right? What happened? It started off actually very long ago, right? In the 1900s, where people used to share their office spaces, right? The trend died down, but recently the trend for co-working spaces actually came up again, right? Not forgetting the WeWork incident after that, right? So if you think about it, I wouldn't say that it's going to be a bubble, but what I would say is we are at a growing phase of a cycle, right? So if you think about esports, right, I believe what's going to happen is something along those lines. These lines, right? It's going to grow, it will come down, right? But it will grow even higher, right? So if you think about it, the horizontal axis is time. This is the progress of the esports industry, right? So I think it follows a cyclical kind of trend, right? So I wouldn't fault people for saying that it's going to be a bubble. But then again, if you think about it, everything comes in cycles, and I believe that we are just somewhere around this area, right? This point where we are about to grow at a much faster pace, and I believe that esports, right, wouldn't the bubble, even if it's a bubble, the esports bubble wouldn't burst at least for the next 15 to 20 years.
So, I mean, yeah. So another question that I would like to like to know, like to ask as well. When will you actually see a return? When will you expect to see a return? From all your investment out there.
Okay, so I think that actually goes back to one of my slides, right? Talking about how actually funds work. So typically, a venture fund will take anywhere between. So this is, let's say for example, this is year zero, right? As a whole fund, right? What happens is you typically have a fund life of 10 years, right? So this is somewhere around year 10. This is as a fund, right? The rate marking is as a fund, right? But if you think about portfolio companies, right, we typically come in slightly later, right? So somewhere around year 1 to 3 of the fund life, and we start to exit around 6 to 8 years. So that is when we exit. That is the time we actually see the kind of returns, right? Of course, some funds perform better than others. I've seen funds that have performed, giving the investors 41% IRR, right? So I think that in terms of fund life and exiting, right, our horizon is 5 to 8 years. So if that is what you're asking about, when we're going to see a return, yeah, that would be my answer.
You must. I'm sure you have to be very patient, to see some returns. So I'm going to spice up some of this question, a little bit, and try to, trigger some fighting spirit in your heart. Who are your competitors?
My competitors, you want to take a look at them again? You want to take a look at them again? Yeah, guys,
I'm
right?
not sure. Maybe you want to tell us. Want to tell us viewers who maybe your competitors are listening.
Oh, okay, interesting. I would love for them to listen. Look, here's the thing, right? Being a, I always believe that there is some element of competition, but also there's some element of collaboration between the parties, right? So if you think about it, right, what could happen is a situation of, could actually happen in a way that we invest together with Play Ventures, for example, right? And then somehow or another the company goes to Europe, right? They go to someone like artist capital management to raise at least six round or to combine together with for example with Trust 2, right? So if you think about it, right, there's a lot of an element of collaboration and it's not just about competition, right? So if you really want to say competition, right, this is the list that I'm looking at, right?
Yeah, that's a very smart reply from you. Uh,
I hope so.
I'm gonna, you know, and looking at all, I mean, listening to your presentation and then understanding from your talk about investing and stuff. You know what? When are you going to invest in me? When are you going to invest in me?
Well,
Or will you? I mean, will you be investing in another, startup or team very soon?
well, it actually depends. How we invest typically requires really capital first, right? So that's actually the focus of the firm right now. Making capital needed to invest. Of course, we are open to invest in different companies, right, across different sectors. In terms of, we can have like a team, and then we have a co-working space, and then we have a whole bunch of other things, right? So I wouldn't rule out the possibility that we'll be sitting on our cap tables.
All right, you are very young. You are 25 years old and start your company probably 10 years ago, sell off, no, not 10 years ago, about 7 years ago, sell off your company, 2018, go into a VC game, you know. So when is your end game? Where do you see yourself in the next 10 years, maybe, which when you are just 35 years old, and in terms of your, overall wealth, in terms of your portfolio, in terms of your, you might be already retired at 35, tell us a little bit more of your own dreams, long-term dreams.
I think it's about giving back, right? Ever since the days where I built my company and sold it, right? I think it's kind of interesting to go to the other side of the negotiation table, right? Where we get to speak to really brilliant founders, right? Like yourself, right? And discussing what the plans and the kind of dreams that hope and dreams that they have, and hopefully if they fit our criteria, we are able to help them realize their dreams, like, 5 to 10 years down the road, right? So for me, 10 years down the road, I probably still in the game, right? Hopefully make it decent return for my investors. But more importantly, I think it will be very much focused on helping young people go into entrepreneurship, right? That's kind of my dream.
Times is running up, and it is wonderful for you to be on our show, and it is wonderful for you to share so much information that that will benefit a lot of even not just in esports, but will benefit a lot of startup out there. From the way how VC function and how what kind of stuff that have look into, and Lance Quack, seriously, thank you very much, and I hope that Gamer Force venture will be one of the big VC in the future. So,
Thanks for it.
and take it away. Thank you very much, Lance. And then I'm sure when the CB is over, we are going to meet up drink
Sure.
coffee, and talk about esports.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Signing off. This is Neo, and see you, Lance.
Yeah, see you. Take care. Thanks for having me.
All right, we're coming to end of our show, and stay tuned for our next episode, because in our next episode we have a very successful coach in esports that's coming onto our show. So if you like our program, please write us comments and give us feedback on who we want to see in our show, and then we can try to invite them. And also, if you like our Facebook page, our LinkedIn page, and try to share this, and all these videos and stuff will be actually available on all our social media in time to come. So we hope that we are giving you some really good insights into the industry, and that's it for today. Thank you very much, and see you next time.